ready to present at the getting ready to start the peak performance. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Savvy Sales Lady Live. We are going to be talking about emails today and how to write compelling emails, but most importantly, composing subject lines that will cause the email recipient to want to open it instead of hitting that delete button and trashing that email. Now, we've all gotten those spammy emails on LinkedIn. You know, in-mail boxes are full of all of these spammy emails. Well, our guest today, Stephen Church, is going to help you not to be one of those spammy people, but how to create emails with purpose, with intention, to make them compelling. So I want to bring on our guest, Stephen Church, who is a master at copyright. Thank you, Stephen, for coming on.
Well, Christine, that's ever so kind of you. You've built me up there. You made me very nervous, but it's a pleasure to be with you and an honor to be invited. And thank you very much. I'm looking forward to sharing a few ideas about email subject lines.
Well, I'm really glad to have you on because in my coaching practice, Stephen, I often talk about emails to my coaching clients, and they'll read me some of their emails, and I'm like,
well, yeah. I think, these things are never easy. And I would invite everybody who's with us to stay around to the end, because we do, don't we, Christine? We have a competition at the end with the prize of a free web copy review. So do stick around, because we've got a fun little competition at the end, haven't we?
Yes, we do. And I'm anxious to see if I picked the one myself because there were two I got stuck on, Stephen. But we'll go through that. Stay with us to the end. We'll go through with it at the end. So how important is the subject line, Stephen? Because you know, everyone talks about, you know, you've got to have this wow subject line. And I agree with that. But some of the stuff I have seen has been pretty silly. Like one that I received one time said, "Hi, Ducky, want to add ducks to your website?" Now, I'm a salesperson. Why would I want to do that?
My goodness, that's a terrible thing.
Yeah, so let's talk about subject lines.
Yeah, I mean, the expression "hi, Ducky." I mean, I thought Ducky is actually a term used in an obscure region of the UK. In fact, where I live, people greet each other with "hello, me duck." So I think what you received there was absolutely dreadful. No, email subject lines are terribly important. And if you think they're not, just imagine you're opening a new store in the high street, and wouldn't you want to spend a lot of time and a lot of energy, and maybe some expense, in fact, dressing the window? The window of your store is absolutely crucial, because if people are walking past your store, walking in the street, and the window is empty, who's going to go in? So you have to think of your email subject line. It's as important as a nicely, attractively decorated window is to a store in the high street. Wouldn't you agree, Christine?
I would agree. And we have Kirsten that's on that has projected her predictions of what the content is going to be for the contest. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about these subject lines. We've already agreed that they're really important, but what are the main considerations? Well, really, in a way, it's a bit like etiquette about how we how we behave. I mean, if you're at some social event, some little party, it's about how you address people, how you speak to people you don't know. One of the first things you would do is to find out somebody's name. And it's a kind of compliment to pay them, to ask them your name and to tell them yours, which is why one of the key points of an email subject line is, wherever possible, use a name. You might decide to use it at the beginning. So your email subject line might be, Christine, do you want to know about ... Or you could say, do you want to know about ... Christine? Now, one of the things I was going to mention further down the list, but now is as good a time as any, there are often alternative ways to do things. And that's where we do this thing called split testing. So if you're not sure which way to approach a subject line, what you can do is send your email using one subject line to 10% of your email list. Then to the other 10%, send your alternative subject line, and then see which one has the best response, which one has the best open rate, and send the one with the best open rate to the remaining 80%. And you should always be split testing the whole time and refining, finessing your subject lines till you find a formula that works best for you. So some people might say put the name at the beginning of the subject line. Some might say put it at the end, but you can test it for yourself and see how it works.
Yeah, I'm with you on the A/B splitting. I think you need to be doing that testing all the time. And I'm glad I got that right, because I do use their name in the subject line. I do. Yeah.
Yeah, you're quite right. It's very important. I haven't worked out yet which is best, though, to put the name at the beginning of the subject line or the end. What do you think, Christine? Which do you do?
Well, I did test that for me, and using their name in the beginning has always worked better than at the end. Because sometimes when you're previewing it on your phone, the email on your phone, the subject line cuts off if it's too long.
Yeah.
So
absolutely right.
Yeah, so that's why I've always used it at the beginning.
Yeah.
And tried to condense that subject line into maybe 4 or 5 words and no more, because it does get cut off.
Yeah, that's a real challenge is to keep it short, but if you possibly can. But there's an alternative if you're worried about it being too short, and we'll come on to this right at the end. Which
well,
is
let me ask you this first, Stephen. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Go on.
So there's been a lot of talk about, businesses in the United States have a system called the Barracuda system. So it's a security system that's set up by the business. And so they'll grab certain subject lines that they consider spam. And so they're always saying, don't put exclamation points in the subject line. Do you have any suggestions around that?
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's important to avoid exclamation marks. It's important to avoid uppercase, or if you use all capitals, well, it can seem like you're shouting to your audience, but that can be picked up by the spam filters, as can words like free or win or prize. All those ultra promotional terms will be picked up and your emails just won't get through. So that's really important.
And I want to, hold on. I want to invite everyone that's watching. If you have questions for Stephen, would you drop them in the comments? We would love to answer your questions. Stephen would love to answer your questions.
I absolutely would. But because I'm an inveterate talker and I might not see them in the chat, Christine, your job is to interrupt me. Okay, say, Stephen, stop talking just for a second. We've got a question here.
I will do that, Stephen, willingly.
Well, do, please. The next thing on my list still relates to etiquette. And that is, when you're meeting somebody socially for the first time, one of the greatest compliments you can pay them is to ask them a question. You might ask, oh, where do you live? Or how do you know Jane, our host? It's the same with your subject line. But you're beginning by paying them a compliment by using their name. That will get their attention in your subject line, but also ask them a question. Great subject lines are often questions. So it could be, Christine, have you ever done this? Have you ever tried that? Have you ever had this problem? Have you ever suffered from the other? Asking a question in your subject line is a surefire way of grabbing your reader's attention. So that's a really an approach which works very, very often, because by asking a question, you're engaging them. You're engaging them, and they feel you're talking to them and for them, not just broadcasting at them.
Okay, that's new to me. All right, that makes perfect sense, Stephen. So I did a whole series on etiquette because you guys are much more formal in the UK than we are here in America, and our manners and our etiquette has slipped to a new low, especially after coming out of lockdowns and COVID. And, you know, I mean, it has been really bad here, really bad.
Yeah.
And so I like that you tie it in to common courtesies and etiquette on a subject line. That's a really good point.
Well,
Do you have any more tips on subject lines, or do we need to move?
Oh no, I have another 8 or 9.
All righty, keep going. I love it.
Well,
keep going.
let's jump to a subject line not to use, and I see this so often, and some of the bigger companies do it. How about this for an unengaging subject line? Our monthly newsletter. I mean, how is that going to make you want to open that email up? So that's really pretty poor. Another one would be the monthly newsletter from HJ Blogs and Company. It doesn't tell people anything. It doesn't give people a reason. If you want people to act, if you want people to do something, and in this case, you want them to open the email, you've got to give them a reason to do it. And saying our latest newsletter does not give people a reason for opening your email. Does that make sense?
Well, yes, it sounds boring.
Yeah, it is boring, but I'm amazed how many people do it. As though that I'm to see the subject line, our monthly newsletter, I'm going to go, wow, it's their monthly newsletter. I can't wait to open this. So you have to give people a reason. And one way to give them a reason, we've talked about questions, asking a question. Another way is to resolve a pain point or tempt them with a benefit, convey value. For example, 7 ways to create the perfect email. Now, that's not a bad subject line because you're giving people a reason. You're explaining the benefit of opening the email.
Stephen, I have heard that when you use numbers, like, 3 tips on prospecting, or when you use the numbers in the subject line, it creates a curiosity.
It certainly does. You're absolutely right. And your interruption is absolutely perfect, because I was going to say something about the numbers. A lot of people will use the number, a round number like 10 or 20 or 30, 10 reasons to ... or 20 ways to ... Much better to use a really odd number, 7 or 9 or 11 or 13 or 17, because that way seems more authentic. An odd number makes it look as though you've thought about and put together an exhaustive list, which happened to come to 11 or 14. Whereas if you say 10 ways to or 20 ways to, it's as though there might be more, but you're only giving people 10 or 20 because it's a round number. Does that make sense?
It does, Stephen. It does. And I will say this. I didn't know about the odd number. I usually pick, though, an odd number, 3 or 5. For me personally, if I get an email that says 11 reasons why, blah, 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 I'm thinking in my head, 11?
Well, yeah.
I'm too lazy to read 11.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yes, there's an argument. Some people would love to read 11 reasons, but it's much better to give a slightly off the wall number than a straight 10 or 20. But of course, Now you're way too young to remember Paul Simon, but he got it right.
Oh, stop. I know.
He got it right with 50 ways to leave your lover.
Yeah.
What a great email subject line that was.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, there was a bunch of movies that spun off from that too, that, that became popular.
Right.
10 ways to divorce your husband, or I forget what they were. They never watched them though.
Sure.
But okay, what's next on your list? I can't wait to hear the next ones.
Next one is quite an important one. Use an emoji. All the research shows that if you use an appropriate emoji, maybe at the end or the beginning, or the beginning and the end of your subject line, you're much more likely to get the email opened. I don't know why, but emojis are fun little things. And so wherever you can, use an emoji.
I have not heard that before.
Absolutely. Do you use MailChimp?
I do not. I have, I use BombBomb. It's a video email platform.
Okay, yeah, because MailChimp always suggests, I mean, as you put together your email with MailChimp, they give you little tips and hints, try doing this, try doing that. And they always recommend you put an emoji in it. And the research shows that an emoji, which is a cheerful little device, will, brighten up the look of your email in people's inbox, and more of a chance that they'll open it.
So let me ask you this, though, Stephen.
With
AI coming on board heavily now, I play around with it. I'm not, for what I do, I don't know that I'm convinced that it's worthwhile, because it sounds too canned. But they're all about emojis. I mean, there's emoji everywhere. And I'm wondering now, with the invention of AI, oh, wait a minute. Kristen says here, I disagree with the emoji in the subject line because I get so much spam, nasty spam that is filled with emojis, and I delete them.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine. That's a personal point of view. All I'm going by is the research, which shows that generally an emoji does brighten up the subject line, and people get more opens with emojis than without. And it's a kind of statistical fact. But of course, you're entitled not to open emails with emojis. Yeah.
Well, and probably it might be, if you overdo them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They shouldn't be overdone. And if you're using something like ChatGPT, and is that where you found all the emojis coming up? You can always instruct not to use emojis, and then you can put your own in just judiciously. I agree. Unless you instructed otherwise, ChatGPT does overdo the emojis. I agree.
Kirsten says they're vulgar emails.
Oh dear. Well, okay.
I think she doesn't like emojis, right?
No. I think we've got the message there. I'm a great fan of emojis. Something I used to dislike was the use of the exclamation mark. I remember people used to overdo them in the old days, where when you went on holiday, you would send postcards. I mean, nobody does now because of email and text and everything. But we as children were always encouraged to write postcards to our grandparents. And I used to get postcards from elderly aunts. And every sentence ended with an exclamation mark. We're having lovely weather, exclamation mark. We've been to the beach, exclamation mark. We had a lovely fish and chips on the seafront, exclamation mark. And I think emojis are far more versatile and expressive than exclamation marks. I'm a great fan of them. Obviously, used judiciously, I think they can brighten up a page of text, whether it's a LinkedIn post or a Facebook post. And I don't find them vulgar at all. I think they actually add something new and colorful to our communication. But was it Karen? Was that lady's name?
It's Kirsten.
Kirsten, yes. So Kirsten, I'm very sorry. You and I will have to differ on that. But isn't it nice that we can differ?
Yeah, it is. It is. And it could be the difference between the USA and UK too, how we do business. And because my other colleague, Simon White, who is in the UK, he and I have talked lots of times about the differences in the way you all sell in the UK, how we sell in the USA.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure it's different. And
Kirsten
certainly, I mean,
says,
yeah.
I use them, just not in the subject line.
That's good. And I bet you, Kirsten, that you use them judiciously. It's got to be appropriate, as all communication has to be appropriate. If I were writing LinkedIn post for a client who is a high-level law firm, I'm not going to litter their post with emojis. But if
Can you imagine if you did, Stephen?
I know. Well, I don't think I would keep that client for very long. So it has to be thoughtful and appropriate. As with all our engagement and all our communications, we have to think about the audience, don't we?
Right. That's a very good point. Yeah. Okay. What else do you have on your list?
Well, I've got a few more. Don't play tricks with your readers. Sometimes people are tempted to put a promise in the subject line. And then, I mean, it happens very rarely, but I have seen they'll make a bold promise like, I don't know, 5 free pages of web content. And then you open up the email and it says, hi, I was only joking, but my prices are so good, they might as well be free. I'm giving an extreme silly example, but be very careful about making exaggerated promises. You have to be respectful to your reader, and your subject line has to serve a single purpose, which is to authentically tempt them to open up the email.
Yeah. And you know what? I've gotten emails like that where from marketers who if you click, they promise you, free stuff, but there was a catch, you got to pay for the shipping and handling, which is $20.
Yeah. No, that's no good at all. One thing you can do with subject lines, another approach is it's not tricking your readers, it's evoking a sense of mystery. How about a subject line like, guess who came to dinner last night?
Yeah.
Something begin with the word guess, and people are curious by nature, like, oh wow, what's that? But then the email has to be good. Having tempted them with the mystery subject line, the content has to be good and appropriate and authentic. But that's another technique to use. Another thing is to use action words such as discover, learn, try. So if you invite readers to take action, then they're quite likely to respond to that.
Yeah, so, take action.
Yeah, that's right. I'm close to the end. I was going to say a little bit about preview lines. Do you know about preview lines? Some people do, some people don't.
Yes, but go ahead and explain it, because I use the preview line in my newsletters that I send out through BombBomb.
Yeah,
and they have to be compelling.
They do. Preview lines, in a way, they're your second chance to get somebody to open up the email. The preview line is actually the first words that appear in the body of the email. And if you imagine your inbox preview pane where you can see all your emails building up, you get you get who it's from, you get the subject, and then you get the first line of the email, and that's called the preview line. Now, in some email platforms like MailChimp, you actually key in, you specify the preview line. Other platforms don't, but it's essentially and it's a good idea not to make the first line "Hi Jane" or "Dear Jane." Make it a headline, one that expands upon your subject line. So it's your second chance to tempt people to open the email, because that's what they see in their preview pane. Have I explained that okay?
Let me ask you a question. So if you put their name in the subject line, you don't necessarily have to start the body of the email with "Dear Stephen" then.
Yeah, well, I would never do that anyway, for the reason I've just explained. I always make sure the opening line of my email is actually a heading, one which expands upon the subject line, like a strap line or it's like a second heading. So that kind of answers that one. Then I would go into hi or hello or dear, and we all have our own special ways. You don't have to put a name in at that point. If you put the name in the subject line, maybe you don't have to put it in the body of the email. One thing you should never do, though, is to use the salutation, dear friend, dear customer, dear client, dear neighbor, although you don't get dear neighbor. But that's certainly in the UK regarded as really bad form. It's impersonal because the person might not be a customer. So either use their name, hi John or hello Jane, or put nothing at all. Doesn't matter. Just start your message. Start it off,
Got it. I like that. I have never thought about it in those terms. So that's a good tip, Stephen. I guess I should have started with this, but you might want to tell the audience what a copywriter really is.
Oh, okay. Certainly. Well, it's a term that does get confused. Again, I don't quite know whether it's the same in the States, but we do have a thing which is copyright, spelled COPYRIGHT, which of course is all to do with the legality of content. And that I'm not a lawyer, so that copyright spelt that way is to do with the law. A copywriter is very close to a content writer. A copywriter writes words for business, and that's what I do. Most of what I do is web content, but I write anything where words are required. So very briefly, my elevator pitch, if you like, is that my name is Stephen Church from Copywriter Pro. I'm an SEO copywriter. I get growth-minded businesses more and better clients by writing words for their websites, which are clear, concise, and compelling. But I don't just do that. I do anything where words are required. It could be LinkedIn profiles, it could be sales letters, email campaigns, press releases, sales letters. Anything where words are required is what I provide, but it's mostly web copy. Lots of blogs and articles too.
Let's show the audience your website, because oh my gosh, your website is fabulous.
Is it?
Yes.
Well, that's very nice of you to say. Thank you. The trouble is, when you see it every day or several times a day, you get a bit jaundiced about it. Oh, that's the little pop-up thing.
Yes, that was so. But what I love about this is, oh my gosh, this is so unique.
Is it?
And I love the little cartoon images instead of having, the regular images. It's just unbelievable. I was just so impressed. And then here's all your specialized fields: law firms, estate agents, accountants, trades, HR, health and well-being, recruitment, insurance, retail, prestige brands, and everything that you do, what you work on, and then copywriting that works for print. And there you have it. There's your calendar. I just love your website. Absolutely love it.
You're very kind. If you have time, would you show people the blog section, which is obviously at the top, the bit which says, oh, you're not right at the top. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Copywriting Insights, because that's where there are many blogs about many aspects of copywriting, and people might find that useful. The most recent one is about tone of voice, and I produce tone of voice guidelines for companies.
Oh, wow. And you've got all these categories that you've written about. Here's your tone of voice guides.
Yeah. This
is fabulous. All right, audience, you should delve into this. I plan to. This is good. Now, I know enough about copyright to be dangerous. So help me with this one, Stephen. Do you subscribe that long copyright is better than short copyright?
That's such a good question. I studied copywriting for years, and I know there's a wonderful tradition which started in the States for long copy. And I think it's more of an American thing. That's my belief. I think in the UK we're more skeptical and wary of long copy. We generally like to get the message over in a quick and concise way. But it really this is something that just has to be split tested. Anybody who says that long copy is dead, I think, is a fool, because it's still used successfully. I'm inclined with my clients not to use it, but if they ask for it, then I provide it. I think I've given you a very English woolly answer, but I'm wary of people who are definitive about it.
Mm-hmm. I've noticed more and more in the USA, they've gone back to the long copy instead of the short copy. I'm not a fan of long copy, but that's just me. But I've noticed in certain campaigns that I've engaged in, it just seems like it goes on forever.
I know.
And then there's this whole thing now with video where you would click on something that you're interested in, and the video, they'll talk about, and here in a minute, we'll get right to it. And then they'll talk about something for another 15 minutes. We'll get right to it. And they'll talk again. And you're an hour in and you still don't have
Well, I agree with you completely. But it must be that it works for some people. But I don't like receiving them. I don't like reading them. For me, life is too short. I want to know, when I read some copy, whether it's a website or an email or whatever it is, I want to know two things only. I want to know, what do you do and why should I care? How will it benefit me? That's all I want to know. And then there's other things like the price, etc. But I'm not one for long copy. What about our competition? Shall we run that?
Sure, let me pull it up.
Okay. Am I going to paste it into the chat? Am I going to introduce it?
Yes, you can, and I'll put it as the overlay too.
Right. Well, we've been talking about different ways to write subject lines, and here's a way for you to see, I suppose, how much you've learned. And imagine there's a gentleman called Gordon. He owns a garden centre, and notice, for your benefit, I spent centre the American way. So that's me knowing my audience. And Gordon sends out an email with advice about creating the perfect lawn. Below are 6 possible subject lines, and well, I won't bother putting them in the chat. I could do. What we need from you is to reorder those. So write down 5 numbers in the order that you think would get Gordon the best open rate. So if you think number 3 will get him the best open rate, that comes first. Number 3. If you think number 5 will get in the second most open rate, you put that second. So just put into the chat 5 numbers. I think we've already had, we had one contribution at the beginning of the show, didn't we?
But yes,
this is what
Kristen said.
Okay, well, the first person to put the correct order in the chat gets a free web copy review. And I'm afraid, Kristen, you were close, but yours wasn't the correct answer.
Well, here's what we're going to do, everyone. Mm-hmm. We're going to keep this open for a week. And next Tuesday, Stephen and I will announce who the winner is, because so many people watch this on the replay. And Stephen, again, what does the winner get?
The winner gets a free website copy review from me. So I will look at the winner's website and I will email them, or we can have a Zoom meeting, whichever they prefer, a review with suggestions as to how they can make their website content more engaging, more effective, to get them more clients.
That sounds wonderful, Stephen. I know I can use it for my own. But before we wrap up, because it's going on at 2:35, Stephen, again, we're opening this for a week. Kirsten was close. She's a longtime follower of mine, Stephen. And you would think after all these years, I would get her name right.
Oh dear. Don't worry.
That poor woman. I've called her everything but her right name, Kirsten.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll announce it on Tuesday who the winner is. And, you know, whoever comes closest. So is there any final thoughts, Stephen, you'd like to share with the audience?
Any final thoughts? My goodness. Okay, well, I'm going to give one final thought, which is, yes, I have. Okay, this is my copywriting mantra. I have in front of me on my desk a quote from a woman who's American, who was American, who inspires me in all the writing I do. And it's the late, great Maya Angelou, philosopher, actress, poet, activist, a fantastic person. And Maya Angelou famously said, people may forget what you said, they may forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And writing good copy is all about making people feel. And that guides all the copy that I write. And it's something, by the way, that it's very difficult to do with AI. AI is great in lots of ways, but only you can write in a way that will make people feel what you want them to feel.
Wow, that's pretty powerful there, Stephen. Thank you so much. And everyone, whoop, we have another comment here. Kristen says, I still love you, Christine. Thanks, Kirsten. I love you too. Thank you for being such a loyal follower.
Kirsten, it's been very nice to meet you, albeit in a somewhat remote way, but you sound like a very nice person. And if you're following Christine, you're a very intelligent and wise person.
Thank you, Stephen. Well, everyone, you know how I end. Sales is a journey, not a quick trip around the block. So I'll see you next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we are going to be interviewing Carol Mahoney, whose new book is Buyers First. So we will be interviewing her next Tuesday. So keep watching, everyone. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, Christine.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.